La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
Get out the matrix and live.
You know what day it is? Inner Wealth Podcast. Meditate and give. So manifest the greater this. And things all good cause I say it is. Invest in your inner wealth. Real generational wealth is mental health. It's an inside game, no toxicity. Let's talk and more listening. Ladies and gentlemen, and now introducing David McCullar, founder of Inception, the first mental health gym.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
La 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 la.
Inner Wealth Podcast.
Get out the matrix and live.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Inner Wealth Podcast. And if you've been watching me for some time now, I think I'm not sure how many episodes we are in on this one, but if you've been watching me for some time now, you probably hear me say every episode. So I was talking to my mom, and she was telling me da-da-da-da-da-da, right? So now I don't have to say I was talking to my mom. I can say now that I am talking to my mom. So here's my one, what up, though? Here's my professional intro to my mother, who is Tina McCullar, the co-founder and COO, CFO, and whatever O we want to add on there. And not my non-professional version is, hey, Ma.
Hey, Dave.
So
What's up, Doe?
what up, though? So wanted to bring you on here because everybody keeps asking, when's your mother coming on? So now you finally here.
Yeah, and it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
So if everybody doesn't know too, if you've come to Inception, a facility, the mental health gym, then you've been in a place where my mom manages Inception, the mental health gym. So you've probably seen her there. But we just have a nice conversation. We have these conversations on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I feel like, we just like broken records. We say
Yes.
we say the same thing over and over and over. And when we say the same things that we say to each other, to people, they're kind of like mind blown.
Right.
And one of the things that somebody was recently, I think I said on an episode where you, as a child, well, me and my sister Tamika, today is her birthday.
Happy
Mind you. Happy
birthday.
birthday, Mika. Well, when this comes out, it won't be her birthday, but
Yes.
but don't say we never gave you a shout out
I
on your
know.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Mika.
Right. So, but one thing that made me think, and I wanted to bring on the show and really kind of touch on all this, is that when I was younger and we had the TV guy, so I'm kind of dating myself, but we had the TV guy, and then the TV guy used to circle what we could watch. And me and my
Right.
sister we were policed. So why did you do that, and how did you know to do that?
Okay, so when your sister was born, I realized that I wanted to be a certain type of parent that wanted to also, I saw myself as a parent as you guys got older and the type of relationship I wanted to have with you. And I didn't want that. I wanted to make sure that I provided some experiences, some safety, some certain ingredients, and some values so that as you grew up, that those values would take hold and you would be happier in your life because you wouldn't have so many of the negative influences.
Mm.
And I found that one of the biggest influences was television and also the newspaper, but mainly television at that time. And we didn't even have Netflix or Hulu, just plain on television.
We had like 4 or 5 channels at that point.
It might have been more than that, but
Okay, 6.
okay, maybe 6. But I saw what was being played, and a lot of it was fear-based, and it didn't show a lot of Black people in a positive light. And so I would go through the television guide, and actually it was a star or an asterisk that I put next to the television program, and I would select something that I thought was more wholesome that was family oriented and there was a good message. I didn't want you and your sister just to be exposed to a lot of negativity and seeing visions of people being harmed because I wanted you to feel safe. And I thought that if you saw a lot of that, you would be programmed to be more fearful and to live more fearfully in the world. And that goes back to what I was saying as when I saw my vision as a parent and also as a female, I wanted you and your sister to grow up and be independent and to find your way in the world. And I thought that in the beginning, if you had too many negative and fearful influences, that it would impede your ability to be more independent or to feel more free that you can have the life that you want to have. And then that would mean that there would be more enabling on my part or more enmeshment. You didn't want to leave me. I don't know if you remember this time I told you when you were 9 years old.
I already know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
Okay, let's see if you remember. I told you when you were 9 years old, I said, you're going to have to move out. And you said, I'm never moving. And I said, yes, you are, because I may be in Africa somewhere. You said, well, I'm going to put a trailer in the driveway, and I'm never moving. And so, I reflected back on that the other day, and I was thinking, well, he was only 9 years old. Of course he didn't want to leave because, you know what, our home was amazing. It's a safe place. You can bring your friends home. I made sure that there weren't a lot of external negative forces, programming you. And so there was no place like being at home, right?
Yeah, but before you touched on a lot of stuff. How did you even? Where did you get the consciousness to know to set the intention? How old were you? How old were you when you had Mika? 20?
21.
21.
I celebrated my 21st birthday. She's born on July 18th. My birthday is July 20th.
So how did you at that time? Because it's not like you took a class. Your environment that you grew up in was nothing like that, correct? I mean, if you want to go into any of that, you can.
Yeah. Well, when I grew up, children were to be seen and not heard, So, we had a roof over our head and, great food and things like that. But you didn't talk a lot. It was just go to school and come home and don't bother us too much. But what I saw, growing up was I saw a lot of young adults who failed to launch and that they were enmeshed with their mothers.
What do you mean by enmeshed? Can you explain that?
Yes. Well, they hadn't separated themselves as an adult, an independent adult, living on their own and taking care of themselves. And their problems and their parents' problems, it became too entwined.
They were like one?
Yeah, in a way. Think of a chain link fence that is like you can't tell the difference between the end and the beginning. And so I saw that if a young adult had a problem, that the parent may have become over-involved in that problem. And so I saw that, and that is not what I wanted for myself when I looked at, myself growing up, or getting older as a female, because you said that, as you said, I had Mika when I was 21. So 20 years later, I wanted to be an independent woman who had independent children who were living on their own and were doing well. And so I had to think about that. Like, so what would that mean from birth until they got into their early 20s? What would that mean on my part as a parent of what are some things that I would need to do And in particular, what were some things that I needed to do for myself to make sure that I wasn't enabling or becoming enmeshed with you? Because that's kind of easy to do when you have, children that you love and you want to be with them, but if we don't continue as adults to do things that increase our own personal development, we'll find that we're relying on our children to provide us with a life or keep us company or, be our companions.
What you see a lot of
Yes.
today.
Yes. And
So-
so we end up, you've heard me say many times, unconsciously, I believe, it's clipping our children's wings. It could start in grade school. Oh, you got a D. That's okay.
There's no like you said you said something about safety. You wanted us to be safe. And we've had this conversation multiple times but the other side is that, and we've seen it. I've seen it, people who I grew up with that and it's like, yeah, they want you to be safe, but when they shield you from everything that could even arouse your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
or uncomfortableness, discomfort, we're not talking about danger.
Mm-hmm.
We're just talking about discomfort, right?
So let me qualify that. When I talk about safety, of course, first and foremost, it was your physical safety. Where you're going to be safe physically. We talked about the whole idea of wearing certain shoes where you're going to be safe, but also providing a home where you felt emotionally safe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that emotional component that's just as important, because then that allows you to build up your central nervous system so that then as a parent, I can step back a little bit and see that, okay, there's a situation or opportunity that has arisen that they're going to have to learn on their own. You know what I'm saying? As
Yeah.
far as...
So you just kind of back off and let me or Mika kind of figure it out to a degree, and step
and
in when you needed to.
And it depended on what developmental stage you were in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, when I wanted to go back to college and I talked to your teacher, you were in the 4th grade at that time, and I spoke to your teacher and I said, well, how do you feel about that, about me going to school? I'm going to be gone one day a week. And he's in the 4th grade now. She goes, oh, that's going to be fine. That's going to be great, because this is the cutting the apron strings time. He's old enough now to know to put your books in your book bag, get your lunch ready, that type of thing. So me going back and taking college classes coincided with you having an opportunity to also get to the next level of being more efficient and proficient in your life. But it all stemmed from the fact that from a newborn, you felt safe that you can now take this next step.
And I was about, you say 4th grade. I think in 4th grade, what are you, about 8 or 9
Yes,
maybe?
yes.
And so I've had these conversations. Sometimes there's been women I've dated where I've seen them leave a kid at a specific time frame that I just thought was too early.
Mm-hmm.
You know, doing a lot of traveling, and it's
Mhm.
this constant. There's a constant change in the environment. Like, where are you going now? Like, and I never, being younger, I never got that from you or my father. And
Right.
two, just to clarify, because you said the word independent, you wanted to grow up independent, and most people in this culture now find that to be like you were a single mother, which you weren't. You were married,
Right.
with my dad, and so it was a family unit. But I don't remember seeing y'all going on too many trips. I can recall a few where maybe we went over our grandparents' house, but for the most part, it was very consistent. Was that thought out and planned, or was that just because you were introvert and you didn't want to travel anyway?
No, that was thought out and planned. Absolutely, because I knew that you needed to have, and I don't know how I knew this,
Mm.
but I knew that you needed to have a good connection with us first before you can go out and be with other people. The connection had to be made with me and your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could feel secure within that. And how that was made was with consistency. There were rituals in our home, and there was consistency. And you knew what was going to happen from Monday through Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday, we were going to get with grandma on Saturday and go to Big
Go to the
Boys,
mall, go to Big
go
Boys,
to Big
get
Boys,
fish and chips,
and cream of broccoli soup,
Olga's.
Olga's, and
Yeah.
so once that was anchored in you, that sense of consistency was anchored in you, and that stability, that then allows you to be able to go out a little bit. But I was very aware of also of who you were with and how long you were with, because again, I realized that other people's influence can possibly be detrimental or not good for you, and it only takes
one event.
Exactly. And then I'm dealing with a traumatic child, a child that's been traumatized, and that could be life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that definitely was conscious, and there were only a handful of people that you could be with, and they had to be vetted out.
Yeah, I mean, I remember wanting to go over to some friend's house, and they're like, "Nah." It's like, and at that time, you think, as a kid, of course, as a kid, you think, well, they just don't want me to have fun or something like that. But really, you're not thinking that I don't know those people. I don't know those people's values. I don't know their character. I don't know what's going on over there. A lot of those different things. So now that I'm grown, that's why I went back to the whole thing about women I've dated and their kids, and seeing how it's like, who are you letting your kids be around? Like, who is these random people?
Right.
And why are these people like, it's new person after new person after new person? It's like, so what now again, we're gonna go into this, but I also want to frame it and want people to understand that you're a licensed social worker,
Yes.
a licensed therapist, and we can talk about, over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you seen what we're talking about and this inconsistency of building a nervous system? How does that impact kids that you've seen?
Well, they don't trust the person that's in charge of them. They don't trust their caregiver to keep them safe. And case in point, your sister, she had a friend that came over. I don't know if you remember this, David, but she had a friend that came over, and her mother, the little girl's mother, dropped her off. She didn't come in to see who I was. She didn't come in to see who was in the home or anything. She dropped her off at the edge of the driveway. And I said, well, maybe she, was late for an appointment. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. And then when she came back to get her daughter, she pulled in the driveway and honked her horn, and her daughter ran out. And I told your sister, I said, you will never go over to that person's house, because if she is that lackadaisical with her own child, I cannot trust you being there and she looking over you. And when you were, befriended Melvin, remember he came over and his dad came in our home. And then when you wanted to go over to his home, I drove you over there. I went inside their home and prayed. It seems to be pretty good. None of my antennas went up at that time. And at that point, you were old enough,
Yeah.
to know, like, I don't want to stay, Ma, that type
Right.
of thing. And so you leave
And
it
I never had any friends who I felt like that.
that you didn't want to stay with.
No.
Yeah, because why would you have friends like that?
Right.
Yeah, why would you have friends like that?
And mind you, we grew up in Detroit. And the reason why I have to say these things is because it's a lot of, like, misperceptions of
Growing up in
Detroit, growing up in Detroit, growing up black, like the way I feel and how this consciousness that I feel into is like we just all grew up in broken homes and we all
Yeah.
just like in Detroit you get off. I mean, there's gunshots happening everywhere you drive down every street in Detroit, and there's no black successful people, and only black successful people have to be millionaires. We were never
Right.
millionaires.
No,
We
but we were wealthy on the inside.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we weren't wealthy like this idea
Yeah,
that's
we did.
being perpetuated now.
Yes.
Like you just have to have all of this stuff
Mm-hmm.
and your life is going to be amazing.
Well, children don't really want that much stuff unless you train them to want stuff.
We go outside
You
and
know,
pick dandelions,
I mean,
you know?
that was another thing. I purposefully did not give you and your sister a lot of stuff. You got what you needed plus a little bit more so you can have fun. And so, you know, you can feel fulfilled. But I was intentional in not giving you a lot of things because I did not want you to get into, at that time, the matrix wasn't out, but right now I would say the retail matrix, because
Hmm.
I wanted you to build your self-esteem from the inside of experiencing things and not having things. So you got things, but if you look at what you and your sister got compared to the other people that lived in the neighborhood, they had a lot more than you did. You know, may have had a lot more things, but you were still satisfied.
I never felt like
You weren't
they had
deprived.
more.
No,
Yeah, I never felt like they had more because the things that we got too, they weren't just given just cuz. You know, maybe sometimes here, but you got birthdays, you got holidays, and then too what I learned early on, and you know, this is from the dad perspective and the mom perspective, and I'll have my dad on the show at some point too, is that I saw a guy um from my lens again. I saw it from your lens too, seeing a woman get up and go to work and things of that nature. But then I saw a man figure get up, go to work, own a landscaping company, and say, "Hey, this is me running a business, and I still go to work. And if you want to make money, this is how you make money. If not even if you want to make money, if you want to get what you want, then this is what you do."
And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know if you remember getting an allowance, because I don't remember giving you too much
No,
of an allowance.
I don't remember an
Maybe
allowance.
$5. Maybe your dad would give you money, but
I don't remember that. I
we
just
didn't give you money. You had to earn
we
money, and before you got to work, what did you do? You had to play. You had to remember the time you wanted those gym shoes, and I said, "What are you going to do for those gym shoes?"
Well, one I told you. No, you didn't say what I'm going to do. I came to you. Let's get it right. I came to you with a business offer.
How old were you?
I have no idea, but I'm like, okay, these gym shoes that I want, and Grandma gave me $30-$40 for my
your birthday.
I need to make up the rest,
Right.
and I got somebody who's going to give me a discount at
Right.
Sibley's.
Right.
So I had it all planned out of like how
Yeah.
to get what I wanted.
Right.
And when you said yes, that began to empower me to know that I can get what I want if I work for it and if I strike good deals.
Right. And I think maybe that was another time, but
It was multiple times I've
but-
had
but-
these deals.
one
though.
of the times was you had to clean the toy room up.
Yeah, I
It
remember
was
that.
always you had to do something.
Yeah.
Take the dishes out the cabinet. So that was our lesson in you have to earn it. We're
Mhm.
not just going to give it to you.
Right.
And I remember that one time you wanted a pair of new gym shoes and we were going to Florida and we said no. And you didn't have the money to get them. And so you went to Florida with old gym shoes and the sky didn't fall. The world didn't come to an end. You
Right.
had to
You
still
may
have
you may be mad. You might
you
go
were
down
mad.
but
You were mad. I was like, nobody's even gonna notice your gym shoes. They don't even know you, so you don't need a new pair of gym shoes. So that was another lesson in
Well, training your nervous system to know
Yeah.
that you know if you don't have what you want, like you said, the sky didn't fall,
Right.
and you're not going to always get what you want when you want it.
Yes.
at the exact time that you wanted in life. And those are the things I think really what we're talking about is programming and building the nervous system.
Right.
If we're just talking about just from a biological
Yes.
standpoint,
Yes.
and a lot of parents don't have this consciousness. So what we're talking about is conscious parenting.
Exactly.
So there was a point when because you started to go to therapy at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when your consciousness started to go even further up in awareness about how to?
Yeah, but at that time, you and Mika were grown.
We were?
Yes. So
No, when did you
you were
start?
grown. 96. You were
I
grown.
was 16.
Yeah, you were in,
But you still before you even went to therapy, and that's another conversation is people who go to therapy have to
Mhm.
have a certain level of consciousness to be
It
able to
was a
benefit
wonderful
from it.
experience.
What, therapy?
Yes.
Okay. So what you had a consciousness already, so what
Mhm.
was it that you heard about, hey, it's this thing called therapy and you crazy, you need to come
No,
here?
well,
Like, cause that's what the black people's
that's the
thought
layman's
process
term.
of
Yeah.
therapy was. Why you
Cra-
going to that shrink?
Yeah. Crazy is the layman's term.
Mhm.
That's not an appropriate tone.
I know. I'm saying
Yeah.
what the
Well,
general
because
consciousness is.
we're kind of diverting a little bit, but because I knew that there was something in me that I needed to resolve.
Mhm.
And at that time, we didn't talk about how trauma affected your life, and I grew up in a neighborhood that had a lot of stuff going on, but amazingly, it was like my little home that I lived in with my mom and my grandparents and my aunts and a slew of other people. It was like a land within a land, like its own little place that was kind of untouchable in a way.
Mhm.
But then again, we were all touched, and I found when I look back, I think that trauma was normalized.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, the way they dealt with it too was to go into denial. Oh, it's not that bad. That really didn't happen. Oh, just get up and brush yourself off, or,
Mhm.
you know, you don't have to, you're not supposed to feel what you feel, or at least don't let us know what you feel, because we're all feeling really bad. And if you let us know, then we're going to all feel bad, and we don't want to do that.
Mhm.
It was a survival technique. We're just not going to think about it. And so I knew that there was something in me that I needed to resolve. And when I got into the School of Social Work, I met some people that told me about therapy, and particularly a Black woman. And I found out she was my first therapist, actually.
Was that Vicky?
Yep, that was Vicky. Thank you, Vicky.
Mhm.
And I found out some things about how growing up in a family of people that drank, or even living in a neighborhood of people that drank a lot or were alcoholics, how it impacted you unknowingly. And so
Unknowingly? Oh, you said unknowingly.
unknowing,
Oh,
you
right. You
weren't
didn't know.
aware. You
Mhm.
weren't aware of how it had a big impact on you. And I really think today that, alcohol is so insidious in our community and in our culture. It's like it's normal to drink. If you look at every TV show, they have a drink in their hand. And so now, they have other things too. But
Well, is that because it's not just so much that it's normal to drink, it's just normal to be in pain. And that's the normal way to self-soothe.
yes, exactly. And so I knew that some things had happened, growing up, that I had a buried that needed to come out and for me to resolve. And so I went to therapy and started to, you know, like they say, peeling the layers of an onion.
Mhm.
Started peeling the layers of that onion, and learned so much about myself, and just really went back and relaid my foundation, and came out of that. That I think it was like many years of me going through therapy, and a lot of people would think, well, you must have really been crazy. No, it just takes time for you to process through everything. And sometimes you're not ready. So you can go to therapy for a few weeks or a few months and some things may not come up. And then you have to go through the forgiving process of forgiving yourself. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I was walking around and feeling this way or acting this
And
way.
that's when the grief.
Yeah, that's when you're like, wow, look how much time I wasted, like, and then you have to forgive others. And how I got to that point was to realize that people do what they know how to do.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second, because there's another feeling that I get from just being on social, and I've said that statement before, that people are doing the best they can with what they have, right, or what they know, and a lot of people are not in a space to want to hear that, because they feel like that somehow lets the person off the hook for what they did. It doesn't make it okay what they did, but they mainly probably did that in unconsciousness.
So let's think about that, because when you say, well, when I said to myself, someone did what they knew how to do, that person may not even be alive. So how are you letting them off the hook? It's not for them, it's for you. It's for you to forgive, because they were operating at an unconscious level just the way you were. And you may have done some things or said some things or acted a certain way. And it just gave me a greater understanding that a person doesn't necessarily sit down and consciously say, well, I'm just going to make your life a living hell. They are in hell, or they are in their own state of unconsciousness and hurting and anger and frustration, and they are projecting that out on you, whether that is what they say, something they say, or what they do, how they behave. Some people have been neglected, emotionally, physically. So that person is just projecting their own hurt on you. So that is how, at least I, learned how to forgive, that I wasn't necessarily the target. I was just in the way.
Yeah. You were just an innocent bystander.
Yes,
That
I
just
was in the
happened.
house.
Yeah.
Yes, I was in the house. Yes, I was in the house.
We've talked about before. I think I always get the term kind of confused or mixed up. Is it the identified client?
Yes.
And can you describe what that is?
Yes, the identified client usually is the person in a group, a family system. Say if you have mother, father, brother, two brothers, some siblings. And so the identified person is the person that the parents may say, oh, they're acting out. They're the ones that is acting out. They're getting the bad grades. They're, dropping out of school. They're on drugs, all these things. But they may be the person that's showing the world that the family system is not working, that is dysfunctional. And they are the ones that are more externalizing.
They're the ones that is leaking.
Yes.
The other people.
They're actually telling the world, this family is dysfunctional and everybody else is hiding it, but I'm going to be the one that's going to out you guys. I'm going to expose you.
But they're not saying, you explain that, they're not saying that verbally, they're just in their
or
actions.
Even consciously.
Yeah.
Or even consciously.
Right.
Yeah. So whenever we would look at a family system and you see one person's acting out from a family system's perspective, then we would take a look at, well, what's going on with the mom and dad? And then what is going on with the rest of the siblings? And what you may find is that the mom and dad, they're not really a unit. The boundaries may be too tight, meaning that when I say too tight, they're in their own worlds. They're not really paying attention to the children. you may also find that even though the siblings may appear to be doing okay, when you dig a little deeper, you'll find out the sister's into some dark things and the other brother is into some illegal things. So the identified client is the one that's acting out the most, and the other ones are kind of hiding, what's going on. And but usually it's not just one person.
Right. Well, it can be because the whole environment, everybody in that ecosystem is
Yes.
affected. It's just that one, for whatever reason, the energy is seeping out.
Right. And then too, I'm glad you brought that up because it also matters how each person in the household is perceiving what is going on. Because you may have one child to say, well, Dad never talked to me that way, or Mom never talked to me that way. And maybe because they have a different relationship with different children for whatever reason.
Right.
If you are, if you're in conflict with your spouse or companion, and then you have a child that comes out that looks just like your spouse or companion, there could be a likelihood that they may take that out on their child.
You just like your daddy.
Yes.
Right. That's
Yes.
what we say, right?
Yeah.
You look just like your daddy. You act just like your daddy or just like your mom. But mainly I've heard it from a male perspective, like your daddy. But you've
Yeah.
never really said that to me in a negative way. Some people, they use that towards their kids in a
Yes.
very negative way.
Yeah. Because
Like
sometimes,
it's a bad thing. You just like your daddy. Like, whoa.
yeah, and
like,
particularly if you're not with the father.
yeah.
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 And so you may have a little animosity towards your child. But I have said that to you, but more positive, and particularly now that you're grown, I'm like, yes, bring out the art in you.
I always say I gotta bring out art at times.
Yeah, you have to bring out art at times.
Yeah.
That super masculine energy to put people in their place.
That's when ass kicking is about to happen. You got to bring art out.
Even though he never kicked your ass.
No, I'm just saying, just
Yeah.
like people who are pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
And you've seen me have to activate it a few times in business on some
Yeah.
people. Like, oh no.
And I'm like, yes.
No, that's not happening. And I think that's been important in my journey, and that comes from having a healthy family unit. Would you say our family was healthy?
I would say it was good enough.
Yeah.
There is actually a psychological term called good enough, the good enough mother. You don't have to be perfect because how can you be? Nobody's perfect. We're all human. But I think it was good enough in that, first and foremost, you felt safe in your environment and emotionally, pretty much, And, sometimes, we know all dads can be a little harsh. So mom step in to
soothe
buffer
your wounds.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
now
yeah.
I go back into like those old days with like gladiators and stuff like that. Stuff the males, they throw them in the jungle.
Yeah.
You gotta
Oh, my
survive. And
God.
it's just like I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, my dad was tough, and but nothing that helped me.
Yeah.
And long as you have the other end.
You have the
You
other
gotta
energy.
have the other end to soothe my
Yeah.
nervous system
Right.
after being, thrashed, but not in physical thrash, but maybe
Yeah.
emotional.
Even if it's even if you don't say anything, even if I didn't say anything, my vibes were there
Mm-hmm.
to bring the environment back down.
Yeah, yeah, because it's you too you're too ramped up in
Amped
your
up.
nervous system,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So basically, the self-soothing.
Yeah.
Not the self-soothing, but the soothing of the mom. So being in the social work field and looking at families, and we're talking about family dynamics, there are definitely principles, programs to produce healthy humans. Is that true?
Principles and
Principles and programs, ways of raising kids and families to produce healthier human beings?
Yeah, there are, but each individual will do their thing a different way. You know, I'm not really sure if I'm on to what you're saying, but I can just say
Well,
that
broken families. Do broken families produce more broken people than healthy families produce healthier
uh,
people?
I wouldn't generalize that because you have to define broken.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess I would say,
yeah, you
when
have
I
to.
mean broken, I don't mean broken as in inherently you're broken. What I mean is that you don't have, um, you're not getting both sides of the spectrum.
If you don't have the resources, the emotional, mental resources
Hmm.
to be aware that, okay, for example, I know some single moms that have intentionally, like if they have a male child, they have intentionally, and I've even spoken to single females, in my field, and we will sit down and think about who in the family can be a good role model for
Mm,
their male child
right,
so they can have the male influence. And who is that and what would that look like?
right.
And also if the person is willing. And that's why it was so important also when I met with my single moms that they realized, okay, you're dating, but you have to realize if your child gets attached to a person who is not going to be your husband or who you didn't marry, what happens when that person is no longer there? And that has happened.
Oh yeah.
That has
Hmm.
happened.
Hmm.
And so, in one instance where, I really rallied around this one man, he had become close to the two children to the point where they didn't want to leave him and he didn't want to leave them. So even though the mom had carried on, and I give her credit for that too, because she was putting her children's best interests at heart, she allowed that relationship to continue and to flourish.
Mm,
And so her children weren't left. I mean, they had really bonded with this man because she had been with him for like 7 or 8 years. And so they had bonded with him. And he says, they're my children and I want to keep up this relationship. And they said, and we want to keep the relationship. So they all made an arrangement of how that would look.
yeah.
And so the children greatly benefited from that.
There's a show on Netflix called Manifest, and it has a scene like that, and I
Hmm.
won't spoil it for people who can go see it. It's in one of the episodes. It's really about a flight that took off, and while this flight was in the air, it was like this lightning storm, this
Mm-hmm.
thunderstorm, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and shook the plane, had everything rattled, and then when it stopped, they called down like, "Hey, we're about to land," and they're like, "Hey, what's your flight number?" And they're like, this is our flight number." They're like, "We can't find that flight number." They realized that flight number um, was a flight number for 5 years ago, because what had happened was the storm and everything. Somehow, this is miraculous thing where they disappeared for five or six
I
years.
think I started seeing that.
So
Yes.
then when they came back, they just showed back up, but their
Yeah.
family had moved on.
Right.
All the people who was on that plane,
And that one, yeah, I remember, like you said, you didn't want to do spoiler alert, but
yeah. So a scene. So you've
yeah.
started seeing the show.
Mhm.
So it's like that was in there, but so that goes along with the question about is there a program or principles to create healthy families or create healthy human beings? The answer is really yes, because even though you said there were some things, it's like even if you don't have the family, you have to make up for something in some way.
Exactly.
If you didn't have a father figure, you have to find a father figure or woman figure. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Hmm. Particularly for those who are adopted or have a parent who died,
Mm,
then if you have a good caregiver, it doesn't have to be your mom, but it has to be mom-like,
mm-hmm.
that person, or father-like,
Right.
that can take the place. And that's why you see so many athletes
They
that,
always say something about their mother.
well, they get attached to their coaches
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because they're looking for that father role,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it needs to be a good enough person. And when you say program or principles, let's talk about what are the ingredients.
Well, I guess I should say ingredients.
Yes, if we start from the bottom, we're first of all talking about safety, and that's just not your parent keeping your body safe, but keeping your mind safe so that you don't have, so your parent is not allowing a lot of influences that are going to make you feel afraid, and that could be through social media or, some other media device or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But also, as with you and your sister, no, you can't go over to that person's house or you got to stay with us. And I remember, I don't know if it was with you, but I think it was with her. I said, I'm really not trying to make your life difficult by saying no, because it seems like there's a time period when you become adolescents where everything is no, 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 nope, you can't go there. No, you can't have that. And it just seems like so negative, like no, no, no. And I said, this is the situation. If something happened to you, and there were some things that were going on back then where this young girl, she went to spend a night and she didn't come home. This man came into the house and kidnapped her, and then they found her dead. And so I told your sister, and I don't know if I told you this, but I said, if something happened to you, I would never forgive myself. I would be devastated. So when I put it that way, I made myself vulnerable and letting you know I'm not against you. I'm for you because I love you. And I don't know what I would do if something happened to you.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point too about not being against us. Like I don't think I've ever felt from you or my dad like y'all were against me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard of that and parents being against their kids or sabotaging their kids, it blew my mind. Like,
Well, that's part of the projection. They are just projecting their own anger or frustration or whatever they grew up with. You're a vulnerable target because you can't fight back. You're a child. And so, unfortunately, you get hit with their projection. They use you as a target. And that's very unfortunate. And I see it all the time. And I just recently saw it. And I said, God help that child, because the damage can be done to the point where it's going to manifest in their adulthood and affect them the rest of their lives.
right. And you talked about something too about therapy because we're talking about, issues in the family, and then we talk about solutions, and therapy is where an ingredient that you added into your own mix later in
Yes.
life. And what are some of the ingredients to have for a good therapist? What makes
For
up
a
a good
good
therapist?
therapeutic relationship, the therapist mimics, in a way, the good enough parent. They are consistent, meaning that when you have an appointment, they're always there, or they should be. Shouldn't be too many cancellations, because that's going to mimic abandonment. You may feel a sense of abandonment, or my therapist doesn't really want to be there for me. So there's that consistency of being there for this certain period of time, and they create an environment in the room with just the two of you, or they should, where you feel safe to say anything. And they do that by their body language. Their body language should be relaxed. You should feel accepted. There should be good eye contact, enough, where it's not, you're not feeling like they're staring you down, but there should be some warmth there, and the way that they speak. The tone in their voice should emphasize empathy, and also you should know that you're there for you, not for them. If they start talking a lot about their own story and their own childhood or what's going on with their life, then you know that it's about them and that it's not about you. And they are projecting on you. And that is one of the things that we learn is that you need to know what your stuff is about. If you're going to do clinical work with someone, you need to know what your stuff is about because you don't want that to be projected on someone else, because then it's not about them, it's about you. And so you feel safe, you feel that you are listened to because they will sometimes rephrase what you're saying to make sure that they get a good understanding, or they may rephrase it so you can hear it yourself. So they may say, so what you're saying is, say, for example, when I did therapy with school children, I would say, so what you're saying is, so I can know that I'm understanding what they're saying. They would say, oh, yes, Ms. McCullar, you got it, you got it. And then they felt fully understood, and I could feel that instant connection between us because they're like, she listened and she understood. Now I can say the next thing that I need to say.
Mm.
Otherwise, if you don't feel understood, then you're going to clam up. You're going to say, well, they're not listening to me and they don't understand, so why should I keep talking?
Yeah. Well, there's a habit of 7 habits of highly effective people. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Right.
And I think that understanding is what provides that safety, and that's why when people come into Inception, they walk through and they feel safe because they feel understood, even though they never even talk to me personally, but they feel understood because they hear me saying
Yes.
the things that
Mm-hmm.
resonate with them.
And that was intentional on our part.
Mhm.
That was the first thing. We're like, first of all, when they walk in there, they need to feel safe. And part of that safety is quietness.
Mm.
When you walk in, there's, when people come in, sometimes people get really happy and they start laughing and we tell them lower their voice, but there's no conflict there,
Mm.
or they walk in and they can automatically feel this sense of peace and calmness because that's what we created, because that's what we want them to feel,
Mhm. Back to safety. It just like all the trauma work we talk about is just really getting back to safety.
Right. Exactly.
And the therapy is about helping your unconscious become conscious. So
Right.
that now, because if you articulated something, so what you're saying is,
Yeah.
and then they're like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They
Right.
didn't even know what they were really trying to say
Right.
or feel. So that gives them the freedom to finally feel that.
Right. So imagine the unconsciousness as a blanket over yourself. And so you have this blanket over, and you want to just peek underneath the blanket and open up your awareness a little bit. I really want to look out there and see what's out there. You've used your defense mechanisms to put this blanket over yourself, which is the blanket of denial that these things really have hurt me. And so if you lift up that blanket a little bit and your therapist said, I see you. How are you in there? I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And you lift your blanket up a little bit like, yes, that's what I'm saying. And so imagine, in therapy with a good therapist, each time they validate you, that you lift your blanket up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, until you no longer need that security blanket. You've come out of your denial, and denial is many different layers,
Mhm.
that can take time for you to do that, because sometimes You may get frightened, put that blanket back over your head, like, no, I can't do this. So imagine, for me, it was like taking that security blanket off. And then, as I've told you many times, part of that therapeutic process too is you find your therapist within you, or you find your mother or father inside of you. You start to build up yourself internally because someone externally has provided a safety net for you.
Mm.
And you know what? That's what we do in Inception. We have those tools that balance out and stabilize your central nervous system so you can kind of lift that blanket up a little bit
Space
and get some space and get some space and say, I see that I was frightened because this happened when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go to start addressing those issues.
And therapy, or again, ingredients for a therapist, if, people are Black, should they necessarily have a Black therapist?
I didn't. I went with the type of therapy that I wanted and the skill level of the therapist. I originally started with a Black therapist, then I went to a Black psychologist, and we just didn't gel, because someone told me, you can outgrow your therapist. I didn't know that people have different skill levels,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was time for me to move on, and that's when I was referred actually to a white male.
But this is after your first Black therapist.
Yes, this was
Okay.
after, the first who I had, Vicky. I had a wonderful experience with her. Boy, I was just really enlightened with her. But then she had kind of moved on, and then I had to go to another therapist, which didn't compare to her level of empathy and safety that she oozed out in the room, that you could tell her anything because you didn't feel judged. And that's another great characteristic of a therapist. You don't feel judged by them.
Mm-hmm.
You just say what you're going to say. And another thing is working with the school children is like, I would tell them there's nothing you can tell me that I don't already know. They already know. You sit down in a chair and they've already figured it out. But it's not for them to know, it's for you to know. You don't know because you still got the blanket over your head and you don't want to know.
Right.
I could look at a student's school records and I would tell the principal all the emotional issues that the student had, and I never saw the student. And he would say, wow, how did you do that? It's like, because, as you said, I saw missing ingredients.
You saw the pattern.
I saw a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not rocket science.
Yeah, that's what we say. When I always tell people, I can tell when people in fight or flight freeze, and then I'll be like, yeah, you in freeze. And they'll be like, how'd you know?
I know. People walk through the door and we're like, they're in fight or flight. They're in freeze. You just know.
Well, the body tells.
Yeah, the body tells. And it's not, we don't say it from a judgment standpoint. We just say it from a knowing because you know.
You can't, once you learn that information, it's not like you can unsee it. It's
Right.
like when I talk to people, like, are you, don't overanalyze me. I'm not overanalyzing anything.
Yeah.
I just cannot unsee what I see and know what I know.
Right. It just becomes natural.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a natural thing.
Well, because you're not more, I don't like the term woke.
Yeah,
they're
me
like
either, because so many people overuse that.
Well, and like woke to what?
Yeah, right.
What are you woke to?
Yeah.
Because you got some information. Like, I knew somebody that got all this information on all this woke stuff, but can't see themselves. So what really are you woke to?
Yeah.
You were woke to something, some information, but you can't see your own consciousness, and you don't have the ability to self-correct. You're not. If you're awake, you're sleepwalking.
Yeah.
So what is that wokeness that we're talking about? We're talking about really awareness of yourself.
Yeah, and
first.
it starts with yourself. And I may, naturally say to myself, or that person's in freeze, or that person's in fight or flight, if I'm around them, as a way of knowing, and this is about emotional intelligence, as a way of knowing, what do I need to do for myself when I'm around this person?
Yeah.
What do I need to do to keep myself safe? Do I not say certain things, or do I not say certain things in a certain way? Or do I just don't say anything, So it's about, what do I need to do to keep myself safe?
Yeah.
Because if somebody's in a state of anxiousness, I don't need to agitate them.
Right.
So that's about being emotionally intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I think all this should be in a class, a layman's class, not a, college, class, but
Yeah.
just and we are
Yeah.
making programs based on everything that we're talking about to really break it down for everyday average people to understand their own patterns. I bought a domain years ago called Know Your Pattern. It was talking about knowing your brain pattern. You typically you know what state you're going to go into when faced with certain type of stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
You know if you're in fight or flight. You know if you're in freeze. And that awareness, I think, is very powerful. And me and you have both been really into the self-help world, and I get that from you. I get that from Daddy. And self-development. Like, we read these books and things of that nature. But really, I think that the self-help world is all trying to do what we're talking about, is the trauma
Yeah.
work. That's really what we're doing. And it doesn't really help because it's not getting to the root. It's like
Right.
reading is only information gathering.
Right.
It won't get rid of the trauma that's in your brain and your body.
Right. And so that's why we have the tools that we have, and we use them. But I think that we don't fully acknowledge how the trauma has affected us.
You
You
mean
know.
the individuals or
Yes.
people?
And
Because
collectively.
they don't know, right?
And collectively.
Yeah. Because there was a quote, and I saw you liked it on Facebook, where it was a friend saying, why is the violence in Detroit going up again? And I said, because the pandemic trauma has unleashed the trauma that was already
Right.
within us.
Yeah, people talk about the pandemic, which was traumatizing,
Mm.
but that's just another layer of trauma.
Another layer of it. There,
Yeah.
like all of a sudden we had this trauma. No, we've had trauma, and now we talk about trauma. Let's talk about adverse childhood experiences,
Mhm.
because we talk about it from family dynamics, and we
Mm.
talk about my journey. I've been sitting here saying, well, great, my mom, my dad, love them, great upbringing,
Mhm.
safety. I still broke down when I was 27.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, how did that happen? Because I don't care where you grew up at. You're
'Cause
not
of life.
leaving childhood unscathed.
Right. And because of life.
Yeah, life. That's what it means. Just
'Cause of
life.
life and lessons.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get through this world without having situations to build your central nervous system?
Mm-hmm.
You don't. Things are going to happen. And so you have to come to terms with, so now what do I do?
Right.
Now that this thing has happened to me, now what do I do? And I think that's the conscious part and the intentional part. And when you could wrap your brain around, I do need to go home, because we had that conversation, you need to come home. No, I don't. And next thing you know, you're on the way home.
Yeah, you're specifically talking about when I was in Miami,
Yes.
and I was going, I started having panic attacks and
Yeah, and I was
anxiety.
like, you need to come home, because I think you thought of it as a failure. I'm going home. And I'm like,
No, I don't think I
no.
just thought it as a failure. It's just, one, I was in Miami.
I didn't want to leave.
I was in South Florida.
I know, right?
You
With
talking
palm
about
trees.
talking about come home to Detroit. No, I didn't.
Well, nothing trumps home.
Yeah, inside my body
Yeah.
first. That home. Let's talk about that home. I'm not, but again, South Florida is way different than Michigan. But I've been here going on 15 years now. I talk about it in a previous episode. I actually share my church experiences, and so as people listening to this, they already got that backstory.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, right.
I was scared, I had to pray to Jesus. I was like,
You had to
Lord,
pray to Jesus at the church I was at with
yeah,
Jesus, using Jesus against me.
I know. I remember that day too. I was standing by the window in my bedroom and I was like, no, this is not happening. You can't have my son, This is that, Lord, you got to do something. And I just let it go. I let it go. I was traumatized from that.
Well, you was traumatized. I'm the one got kicked out of church. I was
And then
traumatized
I
too.
was so traumatized because I was like, is this happening? This cannot be happening. No, he's not.
So, but that's talk about that, because my experience was not as I look back, that was not an uncommon experience.
What wasn't an uncommon experience?
Being at a church and having your mind taken over by the church that you're at, and
okay, that
being
was
and
to us.
also being excommunicated from the church. That was
I'd
a
never
very
heard of any black person being
that
excommunicated
mom.
from a church.
There's a you saw I got excommunicated.
I know,
recently.
but that's your generation. My generation, they don't kick you out. I don't care how
That's
bad they are.
okay. You know why? Because you went to a Baptist church. First of
Yeah.
all, Baptist church is like that. When you start bringing in
They
these,
sat you down. Like they
yeah, they
sat
sat you down. Yeah, I heard that term. Sat you
They
down.
sat you down. They didn't
You
kick
got
you out.
sat down.
Like, then they wouldn't have a church if they had to kick one person out. They need to kick everybody out.
But I said on the show, I was like, I'm glad I needed to get kicked out,
I
because I
know.
needed to
I
just
was like, yes.
not deal with those
That was the
people
first
ever
time.
again.
That was probably the first time in my life I would be glad my son got kicked out of church. I was like, yes. When you told me that, you were sitting on the front step of the house, right?
I don't remember where I was.
You said, guess what, Mom? I got kicked out of church. And I burst out laughing. I was like, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. You got kicked out of that church.
Okay, so that was the first time. Then the second time I went and got involved with another church, which was I would say that experience for me was very good.
Yes.
The whole experience until the end, when I
Yeah.
saw them kicking a friend out of church. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, what? Like, I just saw this just happened to me. Did they have a like meeting like we're having right now? And so I left willfully on that church. And then we sat at the kitchen table. I don't know if you remember this. We sat at the kitchen table in Southfield, and you were like, so based on these two church experiences that you have had, what do you think is the lesson that you needed to learn from how did you attract these two scenarios? And I said to you, because I was seeking for something outside myself. And that's when I really realized that I didn't need these external figures any
Right.
longer. They were beneficial in my journey,
Mm-hmm.
but those men behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need the oracle to tell me that I was the one. I started to learn that for myself, even though I was in my broken down state
Yes.
at that time. Then my
yes.
journey went along to build myself up
Yes.
and to become Inception.
Yes. So as hard as that was as a parent standing back, seeing you being a male version of Dorothy, going along the yellow brick road,
Mm,
fighting, with your little tigers and fighting them along
let's
the way.
use Neo.
Neo, and finding that you're it. You're the one.
It seems like we all go through this Neo journey, and there's a lot
Well,
of
some people don't.
Really?
Some people don't accomplish it. They don't. They say, I want to take that blue pill. I don't want that red
Yeah,
pill.
that's true.
They're like, no,
I
no,
wanna stay in the
no.
matrix.
I'm not trying to see sometimes the painful truth of life.
Yeah, and it's so as we talking about the journey is there's multiple journeys and there's multiple matrices in the
Mhm.
matrix. Like right now, we on this matrix of, the hyper vanity matrix where
Mm-hmm.
men and women, it's so external based. If I can just show everybody,
And comparing yourself to people,
yeah,
to
that
one another.
constant comparing, constant. I gotta show somebody who I am. And that's still like being in the Matrix. That's like you still the Dorothy. That's just a
Yep.
different form of looking for the great and powerful Oz
Well,
outside of you.
I say, I use this quote all the time. Frederick Douglass said, "You are now free, but you're psychologically enslaved." So you're psychologically enslaved to the matrix because you believe that what it tells you is the truth, and that's not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you believe that there's something outside of you, like the wizard,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to save you.
Right. Or the relationship.
Yes. With the wizard, the
The
relationship.
relationship, because a lot of like, oh, people, that's vacation. Oh, bae, and they pedestalize these other people relationships. You ever seen that where like, oh, I want a relationship like that? No, what you're really saying is you want what's the end result of what you think that relationship is giving those people.
And what it appears to
And what it appears to be, because you're not even in that relationship to know
Right.
that thing could be horrible. That person could be verbally abusing that person. Oh, Will and Jada. Then next you know, you see their relationship take a turn and you're like, oh, I don't really like that
And
relationship.
how can you really tell about somebody's relationship based on what some news story told you about it? Just know that's fake.
It's regardless if it's real or not, it's fake to you because you
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
You don't live in that
And
relationship.
really, what is it your business? What does it have to do with you?
Well, it's gonna give me my sense of self, Ma.
No. And that was the other thing that I made a point of doing is not using other people like celebrity or status to help build up your self-esteem, like using materialistic things, particularly clothing. You know, how I was big on, don't put a pair of jeans on that has a name and make rich people richer. That's not going to raise your self-esteem. And I was pretty adamant about that with you and your sister.
Yeah,
You know,
were.
and I did not buy those things.
I was gonna say that to you too. That was one question I was gonna ask. Like, man, you had the level of awareness and consciousness to know that it's not like you don't like nice things. First of all, let's
Yeah,
get that
right.
straight.
Yeah.
You've always been well put together. Everybody I know has always thought you were well put together and organized, right? And I've never known any brands you had. I remember this gold little Gucci watch you had. You probably still got that thing.
No, your sister got it and she lost it.
Okay, see,
And that was a gift. I didn't even buy that.
So see, that look, you would have took care of it. It would still been good today,
Yeah,
knowing
it
you,
would be.
knowing you. But and then too, you don't wear a ton of makeup. You don't sit at the nail salon and get your nails done and all that stuff. You don't put all this chemical stuff on your body. You've been in the workforce and worked in the workforce. You've been discriminated upon in the workforce. You've had cancer and overcome cancer. You know, now you're a founder and a CFO, COO of a company. And to me, you're still as feminine as I've ever known you to be. So
Well,
I
that's
said,
just me.
but I said all that to say, because there's this narrative, and it is the matrix, that you have to act like a man to be able to be successful in life, or that you have to turn on this masculine energy to be able to, one, have boundaries and enforce boundaries.
Well, you know, I'm the daughter of the king, so I don't have to do anything.
Mm.
And I realized that as far as, you know, we all are, my female sisters, my sisters, you know, we been influenced to, you know, touch up a little here and there and do this and do that. And I think that depends on you. And I would encourage people not to go too far away from who they really are. You know, they've been using cosmetics in ways way back in the Roman days, you know, in the biblical days where they used the earth to dye their hair and things like that. And so my philosophy has always been is that I don't want to remove my makeup and scare anybody. You know, I don't want to be.
You don't want to think that you go into witness protection
Yeah.
program when you put your makeup on. Like, where did Tina
Yeah.
go?
Right. I just don't want to be that many degrees away from who I really am, you know? And so I try to do use chemicals, knowingly and sparingly. I do color my hair, but and I just do what I know feels good for me, and not be conscious of that I'm not trying to be like someone else,
Mm,
because I don't know if let me put it this way. If I'm trying to be like someone else, then I'm saying that I don't like who I am.
right.
And I came from love, being of God. So I don't really need to do much more, to
Mm,
prove myself to anybody or to show that I'm different. If I show that I'm different or I'm trying to be like someone else again, like I said, then that's just saying that I don't like who I am.
mm.
And it starts from the inside.
And what are the ways that we talked about from the women's standpoint and being programmed and influenced by the matrix or marketing, branding and all those things? What have you seen from the man side that we are programmed with and kind of that has us caught up in a matrix?
Well, when I look back, as a mom raising a black male, what I saw was that you had to show that you had a certain masculinity in order to survive. And there was a period when I was really concerned about that, and how you would navigate through that rough time of adolescence, of showing that you are a male, that you are a strong male, without having to have some negative behavior behind it.
Like violence or
Yes,
yeah.
right. And I remember, talking to your father a couple of times about it, and he would say, he'll be all right. He'll be all right. And I would say, okay, well, I'm just going to pray anyway,
Mhm.
And so, because it seems like you guys, there's this influence over you, and I'm talking about too from the violence that has really taken place over the last few years. More violence in Chicago, more violence
Mhm.
in Detroit. It's like I have to show who I am by being angry,
Mhm.
you know, and that influence of you need to be angry to show who you really are, when behind the anger, what's really behind the anger? Sadness.
Sadness, depression,
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Right. And so,
Suppression.
but that, when you say that, that'll make you feel vulnerable, as
Mhm.
opposed to anger makes you feel empowered. I can go beat up somebody. I can kill somebody. I carry a gun. I carry a bat.
Mhm.
I carry a knife. That makes me feel empowered, because being vulnerable in a neighborhood where everybody's angry can get you killed. You don't
Mm.
you don't want to show your vulnerability. So I see that influence, and also the influence of proving yourself as a man by obtaining things like a car, mainly a car. you know, what kind of car do you drive?
Mhm.
Females say, well, what kind of car do you drive? Not looking at your character,
Yeah.
you know. And so, so you get this false sense of, I'm so and so because I got a Cadillac, or
Mhm.
I'm so and so, and because that's going to attract the women to me. But you
Mhm.
could be an abuser,
Yeah.
and have those things. That doesn't make you better,
Right.
So those were some things that I wanted to be, that I was aware of, because if you notice, you didn't get a fancy car till you can get it and you pay for it. You got a little putt-putt car
Mhm.
to go to school
Right.
your last year. Say, this is what you're going to get,
Mhm.
you know, because we didn't want to perpetuate. Even though we had nice cars, if you notice, it was like nothing, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, you don't even, like, we drove a car, so what? It wasn't ever like it wasn't like put on a pedestal. Whereas
By who? By you?
by me or your dad,
No.
yeah,
You never talked about. No
we
one
just
ever
went and
talked
got a
about.
car. I mean,
Nobody ever talked about what I got this car, I got that car, or
we just
I
got a
never heard
car.
about things
We
being mentioned about what
stuff,
we have anyway, stuff.
right?
Um, and two, when we got stuff, and this is what we do today. This is what I say about all our family. Me, you, Mika, Daddy. Man, we resourceful. We gonna get some stuff on the low.
I remember when you had on a $50 tie, and I said, "Man, that is a sharp tie you have on." You go, "I paid $5 for this." And then when Mika came to a wedding reception, she had this little black Calvin Klein dress. And I said, "That is a sharp little dress you have on." She goes, "Mom, I paid $25 for this dress." Because I taught you, if you're going to get those things, pay as little as possible. Why are you making rich people richer?
Yeah.
You putting those things on your body doesn't improve your self-esteem.
And when I first got back home from South Florida, I found a connection. I already had that connection actually. When I was in South Florida, me and Daddy, we had this connection overseas, and we were on Alibaba.
With those gym shoes?
Yeah, we were on
Yeah.
Alibaba and EC Plaza before like everybody. This is like 2004. And I had the Jordan manufacturer, and I was getting Jordans, and I was buying Jordans at $35 a pop. And I was only had to buy 10 of them. So
Right.
that was $350. I was turning around selling them things for like $100 and something. And
Right.
from that point, that's when it showed me. I was like, I haven't bought a pair of gym shoes like
In years.
it'd be hard for me to spend a certain amount of money for some gym shoes, because from a business perspective, I'm like, well, I had to connect where I can get 10 of them
Right.
for $350. You think I'm
Right.
gonna go buy one pair for $350? And you start to see it from a business perspective. Everything in the market is priced at whatever somebody is willing to pay
Right.
for it. A Gucci shirt with a Gucci name on it, it ain't like that. That cotton is made from, it's
And
cotton
you know
is
what?
cotton.
I almost, and a lot of people will be like, "What?" I almost don't want designer stuff.
No, I
It's
want my own designer stuff. I want my own
it's almost
Inception
like
Inner
I don't
Wealth shirts.
seek out designer things
Mm,
because they are designer.
nah.
It's almost, if I see something, well, can I go to the outlet mall and get that, 40% off? If I
Mm.
see something that I like because I like it, not because I definitely don't want to have Gucci across, because I'm like, I'm Tina. Shoot, I'm the one. Screw Gucci, like
That's the retail matrix then that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's
really.
that's the retail matrix, and I'm like, you're enslaved to that. You're
Mm,
never gonna raise your self-esteem by something external.
yeah. Now, when I was in high school, one of my friends, Desmond, I don't know if you remember Desmond, and Desmond had on a Versace shirt, Versace jeans. The jeans cost at that time, this is 1998, cost $150. The t-shirt cost $100.
Mm.
So that was $250 for just a shirt and some jeans. This is 1998. And then, the shoes, whatever shoes he had on, probably was another $300-400. And then he come and asked me, can he borrow $4 for lunch? And I turned and looked at him. I said, bro, you could have had that $4 if you ain't have on $100 shirt. I said, you could have got 20 t-shirts for $100,
Right.
and I'm in high school
Right.
and I'm thinking like that. And I thought about that recently. I was like, the only reason why I was thinking like that was because my parents was conscious enough to guide me and steer me and not allow me to go into certain matrices and programs already. So as we close, let's talk about one. There's a post on our base camp that you posted. I don't know if you remember this, and it was talking about programming. It was like the list of what you to do with programming. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No,
It was
remind me.
it was saying, one, you need to know that you've been programmed.
Yes,
And what was the next step?
I don't remember.
So it was, one, you need to know that you were programmed. 2, you need to know, well, who programmed you?
Yes.
And then 3, you need to know, what did they program you with?
Yes. Exactly.
So I don't know if you want to go further into those.
Yeah. You need to know how you were programmed. Like, what were you programmed with? Like, what beliefs don't make sense to you?
Mm.
And that may take a while because there's a lot of programming. And so, because you can't get to reprogramming yourself until you know, well, how were you programmed? Like, what information was given to you to keep you in a matrix or keep you psychologically, enslaved.
Mm.
So, and I actually went through that, where I consciously went through, and it would be not something I did in a day, but, for a while, like I would just be conscious of, that doesn't make sense, just throughout the day. That doesn't make sense. How does that make me feel? That doesn't make me feel good. A lot of the programming is, because you're Black, you can't have this.
Mm.
You're never going to do this. You don't deserve this. Things like that. And you have to, take a look at that and see what your thoughts are. And who programmed you? Kind of look at, well, who was it that told me that? Where did that come from? Just so you can be more enlightened about who was it, so that if you come across that resource again, that you don't want to listen to that.
Mm.
And then, so this is a journey. Reprogramming yourself, is changing those thoughts, about your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And to be conscious about what you are thinking. What are your thoughts telling you? And you can change those by using affirmations or just being conscious at the moment. You can change your thought anytime. People think that being happy is something external outside of them. And you know what happiness is? Having happy thoughts the majority of the time.
Mm.
So people go, that's really simplistic. Yes, it's all about your mind, what you're thinking. Like, what are you thinking? How are you programmed? What are you thinking? How do you need to reprogram yourself? Realize that who programmed you. If it was the community, social media, then you need to lay those aside because they're continuously programming you. That's why, as little as possible, I stay off of social media because they always got something, negative to say or comparing. They're going to put an image up and say, look at this person. And it's always going to be, but you don't look like them. You don't have their money. So that's going to, have an influence over you.
Mm.
So.
And those are the ways to begin coming out of the programming, reprogramming, and then we'll end up into what we call reparenting. And once you can do those things, again, you're going to tap back into what we talked about, which is the inner wealth.
Right.
Everything that you want to truly experience in life is not outside of you. It's your brain and your body that make up everything. Your happiness only is created within your body. The external things are just that. They may be a stimulus, but the response came from you. Till next time, guys.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Inner Wealth Podcast on EYL.
Get out the matrix and live.
Theme song produced by Be Ready for West Coast Creations. I am Razcast, reminding you to take action, be proactive, be congruent. Get out of the matrix, get your mind right. We've automated mental health at Inception. Join the movement. Inner Wealth Podcast. Inner Wealth Podcast. Inner Wealth Podcast.
Get out the matrix and live.